and welcome back to the Me First Mindset podcast, where we're asking what would happen if you put yourself first. And today I have Miriam on the podcast, and she's talking about how she spent this whole last year building a video production company and being her own boss, being a CEO of a company that does government contracting, only to get about halfway through or even just a couple months through and realizing that this is not what she wants. And now she's pivoting into something a little bit more aligned. She's not really sure what that is, but she's figuring it out. I can't wait for you to hear her story about how she continues to just show up and figure it out for herself, and why that has been the biggest impact and the most important thing that she's done in her life.
I'm Miriam Weigand, and I have been a professional creative for the vast majority of my life. And most recently, I have been pivoting to allow myself more space to learn narrative mindset and storytelling, both visually and in the written word. This whole notion of putting myself first has been allowing myself the space to know myself. I think for so many years, who even knows when it even started, became this notion of fitting into a certain box, being good in school, being a good wife, being a good daughter, and doing all of these things for other people. And then at some point you realize, I don't know what I actually enjoy doing,
Right.
what I actually want to go and pursue. And so this past year, this whole putting myself first has been a rediscovery of who I actually am as a person.
And what are you finding? Are you finding something different than you thought it was? Are you surprised at what you're learning?
Yes and no, right? I think that there has been a lot of moments in this year-long journey that I've been on thus far that have been kind of sprinkled throughout my life that at the time seemed like insignificant moments. And then now I'm starting to see some sort of a pattern recognition into winks and nudges that I've had throughout my whole life. And it's only now that I'm taking the time to piece them all together that it's like, oh, okay, this isn't like I'm this new person or I'm a total stranger to myself. It's like I've been here all along. I just haven't been giving myself the space to fully explore these different aspects of myself, my own interests, my own curiosities. So that's been a big one for me to just be like, oh, duh.
It's more of a remembering. So
Yep.
we have these, we're born with like maybe an innate gift, or we start to develop pretty early, like what we like and what we want. And then somewhere along the lines, that gets shut down, right? Like we have these layers of, like you said, good daughter, good wife, good, like the role that we play in life. And we forget that somewhere underneath that was what we started with. That was the thing that we should have been watering and flowering and flourishing. And so it's not like love that you said that. It's not really like becoming a new person. It's actually remembering who you really are meant to be.
100%. And I think it's not to say like, oh, it's even harder, but it's just it is what it is. But in our society, we focus so much on boxes. We focus on you're getting a specialized degree in this one area, and then you go to your career and you stay in your little box, and like that's the only thing that you can, stay and do. But I don't think that that's true for a lot of people. I think we all have this variety of interests. We all have these different things that we maybe not aren't the best at, but we're interested in them. We like to do it, but we cut that part of ourselves off because we don't see the monetary value. We don't see how it could be a career. We don't see how it could be something quote worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so that's been a big one for me to just like who cares right now? Like just go learn it just because you're interested in it. Like I can sit there and read something or watch something on I don't know, ancient history for 6 hours. It doesn't mean I'm a historian. It doesn't mean I'm going to go change my whole career path and go be a historian. But I don't know, maybe that's going to be of value at some point in the future. And I wouldn't have allowed myself that time to go and pursue it in the past.
Yeah. This is something that hasn't come up on the podcast yet that I really think is so important. It's like, I don't know have you ever had this experience? I just had this experience, and I'll tell my experience and I want to hear yours. So
Yeah.
I was doing something completely dumb that I almost felt a little bit guilty about, right? Like I was reading these like fantasy romance novels, right? And it was this whole period of my life where I just fell into this has no purpose except for the fact that I like it. And that's a hard thing to, as an entrepreneur or as a person that was like ingrained in the productivity mindset, it's a hard thing to do, just something that you do because you like it. And so I was feeling like, oh, this is a waste of time. And then my husband is now hiring for his company, and there's this guy that he really wants on his team. So they flew him out, and his this guy and his girlfriend came in, and guess what book she's reading? The same book I am. And so we had beautiful conversation at dinner, but that really like made them feel at home, and like we were instant friends. And it was like, this is the way that we make connections. Like we don't get to know all of the ways we're going to connect with people in the future. And sometimes you're right, just a little ancient history 6-hour binge could be the thing that gets you into a deeper connection with somebody that's going to be really important in your life in the future.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that especially now, I think we're as a society so thirsty for community. We need it so much. And it's gotten so much harder to connect, you know, in this age of screens and virtualization. And not to say that there's anything inherently wrong with that, right? It's allowed for so much opportunity. You can work from anywhere in the world. You can connect with people that you wouldn't normally connect with. So I'm not saying it as a negative holistically, but I think that there's something of real value when you get to connect with somebody in person over some random niche thing that isn't, you know, quote, work related. That just really allows people to blossom and really allows for community to just be fostered.
And I think we've lost that so much because we don't put any value, and so we don't put any time. We don't prioritize just dumb things that we love. And so it's easy for me to be like, oh, I'm a relationship coach. So when I find another relationship coach, of course I love what I do, but when I talk with another relationship coach, you know, there's a level of possibility for friendship there, and it's great. But when it's like, oh, you have a dog, I have a dog, I love dogs, now we're in it, like the level of being able to connect with people on things that are non-monetized in your life, that are hobbies. Just the feeling of connection is so completely different, and it fosters a more engaged, more, I don't know, secure relationship in some ways.
Yeah, because you're more relaxed, right? You're feeling like, oh, you see me for who I am, not necessarily the stuff that I bring, the service that I can provide you.
Yeah.
You're just seeing me for the person that I am.
That's right.
So it's more
and how sad that we've completely lost the tolerance to even choose those things for ourselves in our lives anymore.
Oh, absolutely. I was just having a conversation with a friend who she's also a self-categorized creative. And so we were talking about how sad it is that sometimes we have this longing to go do some random creative endeavor that we wouldn't typically do. So for example, if she's a writer, I'm going to go paint today. And she was saying that immediately when she started trying these like new hobbies, she's like, how do I monetize this? And had to stop herself because it's like, ooh, whose voice is that? Like, who is that? Like, that's not me, right? Like, just allow yourself the space to go and just do something for the sake of doing it, to go enjoy something, to just exist without it having to be this like, all right, great, I'm gonna come up with a whole business plan on how this is gonna make me successful, and then I'm gonna sell it on YouTube, and then I'm gonna do this. And like, that's the type of speed in which, you know, capitalism is running through right now.
Yeah, no kidding. And, you know, it's not inherently bad to make money off of things that you love doing. I think the message,
of course not.
what we're saying right now is just that we've lost the taste for, capacity for, tolerance for, permission for doing anything that can't be monetized just for fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we need to justify how we spend every second of our day. Are you making money? Are you hustling? We live in this like really big hustle society, and there's again nothing wrong with that, right? Work hard, absolutely, follow your dreams. I'm all for it. But also allow yourself the permission. I like that word, the permission to just enjoy, to just live, to just be a person to just follow your passions.
So in this last year or so, you have been choosing that more for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For
What are
sure. It's
what are some things you're doing just for fun?
ooh, I think honestly the vast majority of my time I watch a lot of lectures and I read a lot. I've done more reading this year than I probably have in my entire life. Not like school related assigned reading, just like reading for the sake of, hey, that's interesting. Like I'm gonna just check it out. And then, oh, I really like a lot of your books. And so now I'm gonna read instead of one, I'm gonna read seven of them. So that's been a lot of my time this year is just learning all of these different topics that I gravitated towards when I was, younger in college, that I never really pursued because that wasn't part of my degree plan.
Yeah, no kidding. So what are the topics? Anything specific stand out to you lately?
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of Malcolm Gladwell. So he focuses on like sociology mostly,
Hmm.
and it's great. Oh my gosh, I just inhaled his books. I read which one did I read first? I read Outliers and in like one day, like a day and some change, like super fast. And then finished it and was like, oh, on to the next. And so I immediately started David and Goliath after that. And then also just bolted through that one, inhaled it. And again, finished that one in like a day and some change. And then I started Tipping Point, and that I slowed down by that point. I was like, okay, let's get at a sustainable pace. And so I finished Tipping Point, and that was the last one that I've read of his. But I've got a whole stack of the rest of them that I want to get through.
And those are just for fun. So that's
Yeah.
and the beauty of that though is that there's probably so much translatable information that you chose it because it was just whatever you wanted, but you're probably able to apply that to things in your real life too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much of it. If anything, like not even getting into the specifics, but it's just this whole notion of things aren't black and white the way that we typically think about it. There are all different types of perspectives that are playing into something. So there's not this definitive truth. Um, it's a
Right.
gray area. And I think that that's such a great message for anything going on in your life, that there's not just a right way and a wrong way. There's a series of different perspectives that are playing into it. And so to take a second, take a breath and listen to what the other person or people or group, religion, whatever, is saying, and hear it before you start condemning. That's been really a nice reminder to hear.
Yeah. And I think that again it translates because it's living in the you don't it doesn't have to be like when you're choosing yourself, it doesn't have to be somebody else's way or my way. It can be like this whole middle ground of like trying it out and seeing what blends. And you probably don't have it all figured out, but neither do they, right? Like nobody has it all figured
Right.
out. And it can be some kind of middle ground that works better for you as opposed to just like trying to do it all by yourself or trying to do it exactly the way someone else told you to do it.
Yep. Well said. Well said. It doesn't have to be a this or a that, a black or a white, a good or a bad. It just is.
Right. Yes. So what were you doing before this year? Most times we have this pinnacle experience of a reason why we decided to choose ourselves. There's like an awakening or some kind of feeling. So tell me about like why did you start choosing yourself?
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a long-winded answer
Okay,
for
let's hear
that
it.
one. Yeah, so it goes all the way back to college. So when I was in college, for context, my degree, I have a bachelor's in communication arts with a concentration in convergent media, which is just a fancy way of saying I dabbled in a different types of media and the convergent point and where they all met, which
Okay.
seems like a no-brainer now, right? We talk about like how all of these different platforms are like merging together. But at the time, this was 2015. So at the time, this was like pretty much on the cusp of that. This was newer. So that was my degree, and I focused the majority of my efforts in media production. So I loved video production. I loved all of um, the creative aspect of it. Um, but I was more focused in looking for a job that was like a certain type of culture is what I was looking for. I wanted a
Mm.
small team. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to be um, seen for me. Like I didn't just want to go to a corporate job. So I was pretty like open. So after spending all my time doing video production, I went, okay, and I went and did graphic design. Like no experience, a miracle that I got the job. Thank God. My boss was incredible, super patient. So I went and did graphic design. And I also was a part-time live video director. So I still kind of dabbled in the video world, but was very much in my creative phase in life. Um, and then after that job went under, they just needed to restructure. And so basically everybody got laid off.
Mm.
Um, I went and did freelancing. So I did wedding photography for a while. So still very much carrying that creative phase in my life. And then I needed some more structure. It was really tough. I'm super young at this point. I'm like, I don't know, 24, 23, something like that. And so I felt like, okay, maybe it's time to quote, grow up and get a real job,
Oh,
get a structured job. And I had a friend. I felt like I had met like the happy medium in that regard. I had a friend who had a company doing government contracting, so it was still, he's my friend. We're still like it's kind of loosey goosey. It's not like super structured corporate, but it's a more adult job. It's less like in the feels and the emotion, in the creative realm. And so
yeah.
I
So you were
went and
kind of
did
being
that.
all that you wanted, right? You had like something a little bit more stable, but you're also,
Mhm.
you felt like you were still being yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And so I did that and I worked with him for a while and we built this really large team, doing again government contracting and I learned a lot of business during that time and it worked really well for a while and until it didn't.
Yeah.
And ultimately that job ended up with a huge betrayal, honestly, a huge betrayal. And so that resulted in me stepping off and going on my own path. At that point, I already had my own company where both him and I were kind of working together. And so I had the legal structure in place to go off and pursue my own endeavors. And I thought, oh, okay, it's going to be fine. I'm just going to continue doing what I've been doing the last couple of years. Nothing really needs to change except maybe like pivot my business strategy just slightly, and then obviously, cut ties with him and just continue to go down this path by myself. And then it all kind of hit me at once that like I don't actually really like doing this at all. And
Mm.
I don't know why, if no one is forcing me to do it, if I'm truly working for myself, why am I doing something that I don't really enjoy? And this person that I am is not really who I am. And so I need to uh, explore what that means. And I, I thought it was going to be a couple of months of just like, oh, yeah, I'll figure this out real quickly and just pivot and on to the next. But it's been a whole year now of really exploring that undoing and really figuring out what next steps mean for me. What do I
Mm.
actually want to do? What is my real purpose? It in giving myself the space to sit and figure it out rather than to just like get on with the get on has
Yes.
been really uncomfortable, but so worth it in my opinion. And it's been a struggle of making myself sit through it and not try to squirm out of my own discomfort.
Well, I've heard this a couple times now. There was some kind of just big feeling of this is not it for me.
Yeah.
And was it hard for you when you started to recognize that feeling? Was it hard for you to make a choice to
Oh,
get out of it?
absolutely. Yeah, I was all the spectrum of emotion of being in denial that that was what was happening, um, feeling like I'm ridiculous and that nope, it's not real, to feeling completely panicked, because it's not like it happened all overnight. This was like a series of maybe, oh, I would say like 3 months of the first time that that thought popped into my mind of like, hey, this isn't going to be a quick fix. This is going to be like a series of restructuring internally and building
Mm.
a better foundation internally. Yeah, this didn't come overnight. This was like a series of months of this persistent feeling of, hey, this isn't right. Hey, this doesn't feel right. Hey, this feels kind of ugly. And then once you are listening to that feeling, it becomes more and more like obvious. You know, you can feel it in the body that like this isn't it for me. And
Hmm.
then when you're more in tune with that, the things that are a yes also kind of perk up and you feel those as well. So I don't have everything figured out. I don't know exactly what all of next steps look like. But I'm trying, emphasis on the trying, to trust the process of going through um, that whole exploration for myself.
And so one of the fears that people have when they're thinking about going all in for this themselves or choosing themselves is that people in their lives will be upset with them about it. And so,
Hmm.
did you feel that way at all? Like, tell me about like how your relationships felt when you were like trying to make it work in the thing that like wasn't for you versus the now almost year of figuring yourself out. Like, what have your relationships been like with people in your life?
Ooh, um, honestly, I have to say I'm really grateful because I think that the people that are in my closest circle have been wonderfully supportive. They have seen me just like all over the place of feeling super confident one day to a puddle on the floor the next day. And they've just loved me through it and said, you can take the time you need to do this. Um, and so I'm really, really grateful that has been the case. But yeah, when group out and there's also the voices, like of course I'm not oblivious to the fact that this looks insane. I feel like well, I literally did. I had a company before I had a whole business strategy. And so I know that there's a lot of judgment when you say that out loud. It's like this person, like they have no idea what they're doing, like they're crazy.
Do you think that's
Um,
true, or do you think that's just your perception? Because I don't know, when I hear
mm,
that, I'm like, oh, this person is courageous. This person is brave. This person is like, I wish that I could, like maybe it's just our, like you were saying that internal, what you said something so interesting a minute ago was internal restructuring, like it's
ooh.
still shedding that I don't know, judge in your head about this looks crazy, but maybe it looks right. Maybe it looks like the most right thing you've ever done. It's just other people, you see it in their eyes and you're thinking it that they think that you're crazy, but really, truly, they think you're brave.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of it that way because I'm still in it, right? Like I'm still feeling all of that insecurity as well. So it's like, don't look in my closet, it's a mess. It's like, don't look at my junk drawer, it's a mess. And so I'm very much still kind of in that phase. But yeah, I don't know. That's a really good food for thought.
Yeah. Well, and then what about you? Like, do you think that when you were, and this is a hard question because you're in it, right? So you're still like in the process of figuring it out. So your mentality can just really be feeling stretched right now. But the question is, when you were in the job that you had before, when you were really not like, this is not it, versus when you're figuring it out, like, do you feel like you're more authentic in your relationships? Like, so you're married, what's your
Mhm.
relationship like when you're talking with your husband? Are you more yourself than you ever have been, or how does that feel to you?
Good question. Um, I think it's been, yes. The short answer is yes. I do think that I feel more myself now, than I did then. But again, I don't think this was like one thing that happened overnight. Like it's not like I
Right.
closed my company and was like, oh, like here I am, emerged, a new butterfly.
Right.
I think what it was a series of openings, and I say that because my company before I landed a year-long contract doing video production and marketing material for one branch of the Army. And so it was kind of a weird finding that I had. I hadn't been doing any sort of like creative work for a couple of years at that point. And so I just landed this contract. I felt like incredibly underqualified to get it, but it was like, okay, I'm going to put everything that I've learned, all my skills, on my little tool belt. I'm going to get it out and I'm going to try to tackle this problem. And I think that that was the first time that I felt like, oh, I'm becoming myself again. Like
Oh,
I'm really like doing this. Like I'm confident. I'm acting like what I in my mind imagine a CEO to be. I'm showing up for myself. I'm being a good whatever that means, you know, a good employee. I'm working it. And I think that that level of authenticity then started shining a light in the places that I wasn't being authentic. And so
mm,
that's where like eventually it all kind of came to a head and like broke open. And so now it's been applying that same level of, okay, I'm not in alignment in this area, or I'm not in alignment in this area. And so I think that I can see it more now, and I'm working on trying to not remedy it because I think you're always evolving, but
yeah.
um, but trying to, you know, and I think that that is coming with a little bit more ease now because I'm getting into the flow of it.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is really a cool idea. So it sounds like you really started to feel like yourself in the challenge. So
Yeah.
when the challenge is right, then you're feeling motivated to meet the challenge, and you feel like the challenge is helping you become a better version of yourself, or remembering what you're capable of. When the challenge is wrong and you're meeting, it's either like not as interesting, or it's too hard sometimes, you know, it's in the wrong
Hmm.
direction, then you hit that wall, and you know that it's not the right thing. But really, the most important thing is finding the thing that challenges you in the direction that you feel good about.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think that it's this notion of like, I can get that. Like, there's there's this lie that we tell ourselves that like we're not good enough to get certain things. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not
Right.
equipped enough. And I think that that was the first time that I was like, well, but what if I was? Like, what if I just like
Mm,
pretend that I am and go after it, and realizing that nothing blew up, nothing fell apart. Sure, there were things that I would have loved to have done better, right? But this was my first time doing something like that. And so the fact that it was really growing me to be like, hey, you totally can accomplish this. Like, run after your goals. So
hmm
if that's what's been stopping me all of these years, what if it didn't? Like, what if the lesson that I learned out of this was like, you know, just to go after it, just to try things? What if I apply that in multiple areas of my life?
Yeah. Like not being able to fail, and recognizing that like one small failure is like on the journey to the bigger success, right? Like
Hmm.
because you didn't do everything right doesn't mean there wasn't like so much goodness in the challenge, right? And then having that challenge allowing you to show up to the challenge in more of your authentic self, and then learning even more about who you are and what you're capable of.
Well said. Very well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how are you now, a year into it? How are you continuing to choose yourself and making sure that you're prioritizing what you need, what you like, and where you want to go in the future? I know it's so easy to just slide back into doing something that feels like the right thing for the masses. Like, what's your routine or secret or recipe for staying true to yourself now?
Ooh, good question. I think right now I'm really wrestling through the challenging the voice of the should have or I should be.
Right.
And so we're conditioned to get up and go to a job. Well, at least the vast majority of us are, right? Like we have that like 9 to 5 notion, the 40-hour work week, the, you know, needing to go and do XYZ. And I am really trying to revisit on what actually needs to get done versus this voice of I should be doing something. And so that's been that's been a challenge. But I frequently sit and I revisit the big picture. I zoom out because I think that I tend to think that these goals that I want to accomplish should be here. I should already have them done.
Mm.
I'm gonna do all of this and I'm gonna do all of this in a month. I'm gonna do all of this in a week. And so I have to zoom out and say, okay, if this is what I say that I want to do, am I moving in that direction? Is it may be slower than I like, but am I building a foundation that's going to get me closer to that goal? Am I still moving in the right direction? And so that is something that I frequent a
I
lot.
like that you can narrow it down to one word. So anytime I feel like the word should comes up, I know I've got some work to do in my mindset. And that's so
Mhm.
true because just the idea, the thought behind the word should is based off of somebody else's expectation or timeline, right? Like the should is never about us. It's always about what somebody else expects of us, whether that's our society or whether it's our parents or if it's like social norms. The should really has nothing to do with what we want and a lot more to do with what we think we need.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes into that whole the people pleasing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
especially what I was saying of feeling like I'm not moving fast enough. And so, okay, am I filling my time then with um with distractions to check things off a checkbox to say like, oh, look, I used my time constructively. Look at all the things that I did. Look at all the things that I quote accomplished. But is that actually getting me closer to my goal, or is that just something that I'm trying to say like, yes, I have value because I did all of these things?
Right. Yeah. Just like the proof of work or the proof of value
Hmm.
so that like the next time someone invites you on a podcast or the next time someone that's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is like when you meet a new person they're like, well, what do you do? And you're like, nothing all day. I obviously do nothing because I have nothing to share for it. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
back end, I did so much. I learned all of these things and I got rid of things that I didn't aren't going to work for me and I narrowed down what's important to me and I tried a new skill and it didn't monetize and so now I'm in a different direction. And that all feels like quote unquote nothing when you are speaking with somebody and the question is like, what do you do for work or what do you do all day? The only acceptable answers are answers that made you money. And so it's like, I guess I'm worthless.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's been such a challenge for me. And I'm still in it, but I at least can recognize it. I can say, oh, yep, here we go again on this like whole thought loop, this whole pattern of thing. But yeah, it's really hard to say like, oh, I did all of this throughout the week, even though it's like the bottom part of the iceberg. Like everyone wants to see the top part of the iceberg,
Right.
but there's like all of this stuff that goes in underneath the surface that it's like, I don't even know how to give you a quick 10-minute synopsis of this. And I think also you have to spend so much time learning when I mean, not just an entrepreneur, but I think in entrepreneurship, there is a great degree of just learning, of just researching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't think that we value that as much as we should because it's seemed as like, quote, a waste of time.
Yeah, you only get to see like the only thing that we care about is like the highlight reel on Instagram or like like somebody's like how much money I made in this month or whatever. Like, but you don't get to see like the 5, 6, 7 years it took them to learn that skill when
Hmm.
they were doing that. And at some point along the lines, it does seem to pay off for a lot of people. It's just capturing these parts of the in-between times is it, and this is a question for you, even in the middle or even at the beginning of figuring it out where we're not quite monetized, we're not where we want to be, we're not crossed the finish line, we don't know where the finish line is, we have no direction in where we're trying to go. Like, is it worth it for you even now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's days where it's harder than other days, but there's also days that I wake up with this like gusto that I don't think I ever had before because it's like there's nothing stopping me except for me. And so if I really want to get at it, like I can. I have the time, I have the bandwidth, I have um the tools. You can learn anything on YouTube basically. And so if
Yeah.
there's questions that come up, you know, research it, Google it. This is the time of information where you can find all of these answers relatively easily. And so I think that there's a degree of empowerment that I really appreciate that I wouldn't change now that I've experienced it. I don't think
Yeah.
I can go back.
I hear that all the time too. Like there's just not any going back. Once you start to ask yourself those questions about like what makes me happy, what fills me up, what's important to me, and you start to build a life around that, it's really difficult to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Mm. If somebody is trying to start prioritizing themselves, putting their own needs first, meeting their own needs first, getting to know who they are for the first time, what's your advice for them?
Mm, I think be patient with yourself because at least I'm speaking from my own experience. I think there's a big degree of judgment of things that come up. Immediately, I wanted to suppress it. Like, oh, like what is this? Like, oh. And I look at it as like less than maybe.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that that's also showing you important parts of yourself and allowing you to discern what is your voice versus just society's voice or somebody else's voice. And so be patient going through that process and approach it with a degree of love because this is all new and you are learning how to be on your own team and that just takes time.
I love that. You're learning how to be on your own team, like being your own advocate, maybe even your own friend, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we uh force, like there's this whole race to something, race to success, and it's I'll race at whatever cost. I'll work myself to death. I'll tell myself ugly things so that I can just get it done, so that I can motivate myself. And I think we motivate ourselves a lot with fear and just ugly emotion. And
Right.
now it's like, okay, well, this isn't working for me. This isn't sustainable anymore. So what is? And it's new, and it just takes time to figure out how to um, motivate yourself in a place of love as a place of like hurt.
Yeah, just like acceptance, gratitude for the process, just loving yourself because you don't find what you love in other things if you don't allow yourself to love yourself first, right? You don't, there's no way for you to become the best version of yourself with your best offering if you're being your own worst abuser all the time.
Or you're carrying around this giant sack of guilt by, okay, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to go explore this new avenue for myself. But the whole time I'm going to feel super guilty about it. I'm going to just like negative self-talk the whole time that I'm doing it. And again, like I'm not preaching to the choir. I'm very much preaching to myself.
No, I'm part of the
But
class, right?
yeah, yeah, I think we all are. But yeah,
It's me. I'm the one that feels
me
guilty
on the choir.
100%.
Yeah. But it's just it's a new experience. You're learning a different way of going about doing life than you have been the last X number of years.
This, I don't even say, I was going to say silver lining, but I don't even want to say it's the gold prize. The silver lining is success in your business, but the gold prize is actually learning about yourself and finding out enough about yourself to make aligned choices in who you really are going forward.